Things Podcast. Hey, Phantomaniacs, welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast, where we talk about toys, movies, music, and all manner of pop culture dorkery. I am your host, Dave, and I just finished talking to our pal Richard Yule of the Nerdy Laser podcast about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. I loved it. I have not had an opportunity to talk about it on the show because I didn't think anybody I knew had even seen the movie. I thought it was really cool, but if you want to hear more about that, you can go to Podbean, look up Nerdy Laser, and listen to Rich's show. He's awesome. We love him. So I was thrilled to be on that, and I was thrilled to be talking about Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, which is a very cool movie. If you haven't seen it, go see it, and then go listen to me and Rich dissect it. So anyway, what's happening now? You guys, like 2 weeks ago, I messed my back up. If you don't know the ongoing narrative, about 10 years ago, 12 years ago probably, I fell off the roof of our house. It was not the house that the Phantom Zone is located in. It's the house that we were renting prior to getting married and moving into this house. But long story short, I was trying to clean the gutters, and the ladder slipped. I fell off of the roof and was pretty jacked up for a month or so. Fortunately, I didn't break anything, but much of me turned a very disturbing, dark, purplish black color, and I had trouble walking for a while. But eventually, everything was okay because I was 30 then. And my body still recovered from things. Little did I know, years later, the repercussions of that fall would come back to haunt me from time to time. Every once in a while, I will realize. Now, very rarely do I realize it when it happens. But the next day, I will be like, ugh, I did something to mess my back up yesterday, and I'll have to sit and think, did I try to tie my shoe too fast? Did I turn while lifting? What did I do? What did my dumb self do to mess my back up this time? So what happened this time is my shower needed repairs. It took a long time. I was using the other shower and didn't notice that the bath mat wasn't down, stepped out of the shower, slipped a little bit, and just that little slip, my foot probably didn't even move 6 inches across the bathroom floor, but that quick, unexpected movement was enough to make the muscle, it's in my lower back, right around my left hip, there is a spot. And when I do specific things, that spot that hit the ground, probably when I fell, hit the ladder and the ground, that spot gets angry. And when it gets angry, it clenches up, really, like, clenches its face up and makes a fist, and that little muscle just scrunches up and goes, "Ooh, you motherfucker, you pissed me off, and I'm going to ruin your life for at least 2 weeks." So that's what happens in my back. So right now, that little angry muscle is clenching up and giving me some issues. And it's not, I wouldn't qualify it as pain because I've been in pain. This is just extreme discomfort. And like when I stand up from a sitting position and when I walk certain ways, but I can get by. It's not anything debilitating. It's not even really, it's just, it's annoying. It's really, really annoying. And I can't get comfortable. So it's been like that for like 2 weeks now. And here's another fun thing, and I think I told you guys about this one. Sometimes what aggravates it is I wear a mouth guard when I sleep because I discovered a few years ago I grind my teeth like crazy. I can't imagine what could possibly stress me out enough to have me grind my teeth at night. What could that possibly be? Day job? But anyway, So I started wearing a mouth guard, and I grind my teeth to such an extent that I actually will gnaw holes into the mouth guard, and eventually they're deep enough that my teeth will get stuck in the holes, which prevents my jaw from moving freely during the night, and that will cause my back to spasm and for that angry little motherfucker muscle to knot up and give me problems, sometimes so bad that I cannot get out of bed. So now that you guys have heard about my exciting old man back problems, and I'm sure I will get messages and emails saying you should try DDP yoga or whatever. I know that I should. Somebody send me a free subscription to DDP yoga, and I will get on that right away. Anyway, and yeah, I know he's doing a 7-day free trial right now, and I should really get into it. And I know our pal Bear from the fantastic Bean and Bear is doing DDP yoga and seeing fantastic results. But I haven't. It's my own damn fault. All right, so Nerdy Laser, go check him out. He's on Podbean, which is, of course, where we are hosted each and every week of the Needless Things podcast. And I love talking to Rich, and you'll enjoy that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom episode. After you go see the movie, go see it. It's so much fun, you guys. Like, don't look at the trailer and be like, oh, it's another dinosaur. What are they going to do with the island now? Oh, no, it's awesome. It's really cool. It's fun. It's fun science fiction. If you can take off your critical hat for 2 hours and just have a good time, you will. The characters are better developed. Everything's better. But like I said, you need to listen to me and Rich talk about it. Okay, let's see. This week on the show, it is one of the episodes that I get really excited about. We are looking at the year 1988 with our pals Chris, Beth, and Sean. It's an awesome episode. You're going to enjoy it. This is the third one of these that we've done. The first one was 1986. Last year we did 1987. This year, 1988. And if you're a math genius, you can probably figure out what we're going to do next year. I will point out that we also do a Dragon Con panel like this, but I switch up the guests. The content is a little bit different, and for me it's challenging because I have to find enough things to talk about for the podcast and for this panel, because I won't repeat myself. As you guys may know by this time, I am not a big fan of doing the same thing over and over again. I just can't do it. So I have to find new topics for our Dragon Con panel, and I'm very excited. You are going to want to turn up for that one. I don't even know that it's been announced yet, so of course it may or may not happen. But if it does happen, you're going to want to show up. Trust me. It's going to be a special one. Okay, I don't think I have anything else to promote or put over. Please go to needlessthingspodcast.com, click on the big Amazon box, and just buy some stuff. It doesn't cost you anything extra, and it helps support Needless Things. You can follow me on Twitter as Phantom Troublemaker. I don't know why you would, though, when you could go to Instagram, which I immensely prefer, also Phantom Troublemaker. And please join the Needless Things Podcast Facebook group. It's great. We have fun. We don't get negative over there. I mean, we get realistically negative. But I try to curate that group pretty well and maintain a pretty firm grip on the tone. And I don't tolerate a whole lot of your opinion is stupid, the things you like are stupid. I don't deal with that a whole lot. As a matter of fact, just a few months ago, I had a heart-to-heart talk with a couple of folks about doing exactly that kind of thing. They played the Mr. Belvedere gives a talk music while it was happening. That's how emotionally impactful it was at the time. So anyway, join all those things, follow all those things. Please, if you enjoy the show, spread it around, share it with people. You know how social media works. If people that aren't me don't share the show, then people that aren't us won't ever see the show. And I want people, hear the show. I said see the show, and I meant like they'll see the link or whatever. But I want people that aren't us to hear the show also. And I get it. You're cool. You're a little covetous of your special Needless Things privilege that you're like one of the few that are in on it. But let's spread the thing out. Let's let more people know. Spread the needless word to the people, and maybe get me a little cheddar, right? I mean literal cheddar. I'm kind of hungry. I haven't had dinner yet. So now I'm going to stop this, and I'm going to let you listen to a wonderful batch of people talking about 1988. It is time once again to travel back into the past with the Needless Things Irregulars. It's 2018, which means it's time to look back at 1988. I can hardly wait for 10 years from now when we're doing 1998. But no, now it's right. It is time now to go back into the 80s, and you know this group, but we're going to introduce them anyway. First of all, we have our pal, Sean Reed. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, how's it going? It's been a while since I've been on the show, period. I've missed the last
you've been
few movie reviews, too.
You've been ducking out of commentaries, which, granted, I realize a month isn't really enough notice for you to get your affairs in order. So,
I'm going to blame that on clients. I've had so much side work going on recently, so
that's good.
I'm just going to go hide.
That means I'll just expect a great Christmas present this year.
There you go. Well, something's got to pay for all the damn Disney trips.
And also joining us, our pal Beth. How are you doing tonight?
Hello. I'm swell. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm excited about 1988.
It's been a long time since I've been on one as well.
Yeah, I guess so. This is I've been doing a lot of interviews. I've been doing a lot of lazy shows because
we're moving on up in the world and getting lazier.
I don't know about all that, but yeah, it's good to hear everybody back. And of course, finally, our pal from I guess not across the country, but up the country, maybe
up north.
Up north, yeah, our pal from up north, Chris. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
I love this group. I love doing this episode. I've been very excited about this one, which honestly, I've been enjoying the excitement in the anticipation of recording this episode, and that's why I pushed it back twice before we actually recorded it. I just wanted to really revel in that anticipation, because once we're done recording, then what do I have to look forward to?
1989.
Well, yeah, exactly. Dude, in 1989... that one's going to be tough. You want to talk about a good year. But before we get there, we got to talk about 1988. And I think this time around, if you're ready, Sean, why don't you start?
All right. So first thing I'm going to go with, and God damn it, this was hard. Just so when I was reviewing all the different music that came out in 1988, I was like, oh, surely there's got to be something I can pick from. That's going to be pretty easy. Every awesome rap album from my childhood apparently came out in 1988.
Yes, it did.
And I was like, shit, it's all of them. I was like, every single one. But I'm going to narrow it down, and I'm just going to go with my top choice is going to be It Takes a Nation of Millions by Public Enemy. Just because of all those rap albums, that's the one that got played continuously for years after that. There are plenty of times I went back to Straight Outta Compton, plenty of times I went back to all the stuff by Eric B. and Rakim, but none of those got nearly as much play as Public Enemy. So there was just something about that album. It felt like that was the first time that rap really felt like punk rock to me, and just listening to it. I remember, fast forward many years when I went away to college, the very first album I pulled on and played loudly in the dorm was It Takes a Nation of Millions. Just everything about Public Enemy was just, they captured so much youthful rage and aggression that I probably couldn't relate to as a middle-class white kid in suburban Georgia. But
you tried.
But yeah, all the same, I was like, no, I'm totally feeling this. I'm down with that. Damn the man. Fuck the police. All of that. And then I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to go work at Kroger now. Super not hard. But yeah, so that's my big standout album. In a sea of, I'm sure we're going to get to a lot of the other albums that came out in 1988, but yeah, that's my big standout music thing. It's just, how can you go wrong with Chuck D's voice? And then, fast forward to Anthrax and Public Enemy, the crossover. And, it's absolutely, completely timeless. Still gets regular Spotify play even today. So formative years for a young Rad Ranger were Chuck D and Public Enemy in 1988 in my attic bedroom.
I think Public Enemy transcends the era maybe a little better than some of the other stuff that came out. And as much as I love, basically, like you guys said, every hip-hop album that came out in 1988, but I think that's the one that kind of stayed in the rotation where, Eric B. and Rakim and some of the other stuff might have been like, yeah, those were really cool for a couple of years. Now I've got new stuff to listen to. Public Enemy never went away. You know what I mean? It never left the playlist.
They absolutely stuck around, and you look at it. I mean, you look at it even today, even after all the Flavor Flav VH1 reality shows. You're like, but that's fine because that's Flavor Flav. He's kind of always been an idiot.
Right.
That's his thing. And it's less weird to listen to Public Enemy knowing that Flavor Flav was an idiot than it is to listen to Straight Outta Compton and then watch Are We There Yet with Ice Cube. Or realize that Dr. Dre sold Beats to Apple for billions of dollars. And you're like, it just doesn't seem the same anymore.
Well,
but
to be fair, I mean, that was always Dre's goal. To become the Black Tycoon, was definitely on his bucket list.
Oh, absolutely.
Whereas becoming the friendly face to white families everywhere, maybe not on Ice Cube's list.
Right. You're like, what are you doing? Now, getting paid, that's what he's doing. He's making a lot more money than all of us. So I'm not going to fault him for that.
So when you were 12, right?
In 88, I would have turned 13 later that year.
That's
so,
right.
yeah,
That's
12
right.
for most of the year.
You're very slightly older than me.
Yeah.
So, but what about hip-hop and parents?
Oh, my parents didn't care. I had hippie parents that listened to all kinds of shit, and they really didn't care anything about my music.
Okay.
Which almost made the rebellion even worse because it was like it didn't matter as long as
you were rebelling against nothing.
Right. I was like, why don't you understand the rage that I feel when I play this music? And my dad was like, fuck you, I got the Doors and I'm high right now. So they didn't really bother. It was, most of my music rebellion and stuff was not very rebellious. My parents bought me the Two Live Crew Nasties They Wanna Be album. Because I was like, this is about to be banned by the government. They're like, okay, we'll pay for it. We'll get it for you.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, stupid hippie parents. But that was also the year, 1988 was the year that I'd moved for the second time after moving to Georgia the year prior. And so I was starting a new school with Beth, actually, and trying to adjust to being in Georgia after living in Pennsylvania for the first 12 years of my life. And so just having gotten used to the culture shock and then moving yet again. So there was a lot of time listening to Public Enemy in my attic bedroom with headphones on, being angry at the universe.
You had a lot of rage, but for different reasons.
Exactly. Lots of pent up, I'm an angry 13-year-old moron.
Chris and Beth, you guys have any fond Public Enemy memories?
Quite a few, because to Sean's point, I'm a huge hip-hop fan. In fact, I know last year when we were talking about albums and stuff like that, I mentioned how just growing up with my older cousins, they were very big into the hip-hop scene, and that's kind of what got me at the younger age of 7 and 8 years old in 1988 into music that I probably should not have been listening to. Definitely did not understand the context of much of it, but that's a great album. It's funny because the counterpoint to his argument, or the argument as a whole as far as what holds up, I know we were talking about being pressed for time earlier, but one of the things that I was going to mention tonight was my personal favorite from 1988 was Straight Outta Compton. So I might as well just throw that one out there now, because I think that one still holds up as an album. I just don't think NWA holds up as people, like we were saying.
Yeah.
Ice Cube becoming an actor and everything. But excuse me, that album. I mean, here I am, an 8-year-old preppy white kid. So I'm not even in the teen years. I'm not in the formative years yet. I'm really just kind of listening to whatever my cousins are listening to. And I just thought Straight Outta Compton was the coolest thing ever. And I remember that the cable system that my aunt had at her house was different from the one that I had at my house. And there was a channel on it called the Jukebox Channel. Does that ring a bell to any of you guys?
Yeah. We didn't have it, I don't think, but I have heard of it. I've heard it spoken of.
So it was basically like a TRL channel. Years before MTV created TRL, you would pay $1.99, call up and request a video to be played. So it was like a music video DJ service, more or less. And I used to record music videos because this was at the point in my life where I was taping everything. And I had like my like rap compilation tape from the Jukebox channel. And I had Straight Outta Compton's video on it and Express Yourself. And I was just all in on NWA. Whereas Public Enemy, I liked them at the point, you know, my cousins were into them. I liked the music and stuff. But I actually got into them a little bit later on, around the time of the Anthrax crossover, and then kind of backtracked a little bit. So it's actually funny how that all tied together with what Sean was saying at his point.
That was my experience as well. So Straight Outta Compton was more your speed at the time. I was just agreeing that Public Enemy, I didn't get into them until they teamed up with Anthrax, and then I kind of went back and checked everything out.
Oh, yeah. Once that happened, I was all in on them. I mean, I'm a hip-hop head to a T. Public Enemy has always been one of my favorites, but NWA was always just that much more, I don't want to say influential, because what do I know about the ghetto?
Right.
I'm an Italian preppy white kid from the Northeast. I know nothing about Compton or anything like that. But just the music, I don't know, like the vibe they gave off, which I understand was something that I could not relate to, it stuck with me. And it's something to this day. You know, even when the movie came out, you know, I thought that was a fantastic movie, even though they played to Dr. Dre and Ice Cube because, of course, they were producing it. And, they kind of rewrote the story, history a little bit. But I think that everything NWA still holds up pretty well, despite the way they branched off in later years.
You know, it's funny. I never really got into NWA because I was always the, like, Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul. Like, I was that guy. And I never, until Wu-Tang, I never got into the gangster rap stuff. And I don't even know that I group Wu-Tang in with that because they definitely transcended it. But I just never got into that side of it really at all. And I watched the documentary and I can enjoy the known NWA songs, but they just weren't in my playlist really.
And it's funny that you mentioned that too, because Tribe is actually my personal favorite rap act of all time. One of my favorite bands in general of all time.
Have you seen the Vans?
I have 2 different pairs of them.
Ah, nice.
I actually got them in New Orleans during WrestleMania week.
Oh, you know what? I think you put a picture up of them, didn't you?
I did, because I had to like reformat my suitcase just to bring them home. My friend brought me a bottle of scotch down there, and I couldn't fit it, so I gave it to like one of the other people. I'm like, here, take this bottle of scotch. I can't fit this. I gotta bring it home.
I need my shoes.
But yeah, there was a van store down near Bourbon Street, and we were walking down there during the day before one of the shows. And I was like, oh, those Tribe Called Quest sneakers are out today. And I went in, and the guy's like, I only have 2 pairs left, and these are the sizes I have, and they happen to have my size in both of them. So I got the low tops, which had Phife Dawg's lyrics like graffiti on them, and then I got the yellow colored high tops with the Bonita Applebum design.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have 2 pairs of Tribe Called Quest fans. I am all in on those.
Very nice. Beth, do you have any NWA or Public Enemy thoughts?
You know, not at that time. Looking over the music of 1988, there's a lot of stuff that I was listening to 3 and 4 years later, like the rap, most of the rap albums. I mean, in 1988, I was still listening to Run DMC and Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
But, like, I wasn't listening to Jane's Addiction and the Sugar Cubes and all of the really hardcore rap albums until several years later. So I was basically unaware of all of that stuff at the time. And I could try and make myself sound cooler like I was into that at the time, but...
No, this isn't the place for that.
I don't want to lie.
No, and I'm in the same boat. Like, I was definitely watching Public Enemy videos and aware of Public Enemy, but in 1988, I like I said, it wasn't until they teamed up with Anthrax. And, same thing. Run DMC and the Beastie Boys were still at that time, well, and Weird Al. Like, those were my groups at that point. So,
My exposure to rap was Weird Al. That's
no. Really... I'm just saying musically, that's what I was listening to.
Well, and you're not wrong. I mean, that's what we were all listening to. We didn't, even if we were listening to other things, we were still like, but if I can put on that new Weird Al record, then it's going to be on.
And I'll admit, I was still super into U2 in 1988, and I'm ashamed to say that now, but I was.
No, it's okay. We have no no guilty secrets about our past here. We've all liked dumb things in our time, I'm sure. Matter of fact, maybe that would be a good future episode. Dumb shit that we're ashamed we liked.
Oh, I'm not ashamed of anything, but I've got plenty of dumb shit we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily ashamed. I wouldn't say I ever have guilty pleasures. I feel no guilt about my pleasures.
Yeah. Well, I was
gonna say, if you listen to the past episodes of this, I like all kinds of dumb shit. I'm very candid about it.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the third slot here because I've been terrified somebody else would get to it first, and I'm glad we've gone in a completely different direction. So I'm going to grab the steering wheel. I'm going to veer way to the left of where you guys are and say that in 1988, back in the 80s, my mom took me to see all the movies, but when we would visit my grandparents in Wilmington, North Carolina, my papaw would take me to see movies. And in 1988, we went and saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And that movie remains, to me, one of the most impressive cinematic accomplishments of all time. The fact, it's not just about the fact that it's live action with animation, which to 12-year-old me, who had been obsessed with cartoons and was becoming more obsessed with the idea of human acting and like what went into making movies and stuff, and to take these cartoons and these humans and to have them interact in such a convincing way that still holds up 30 years later, was amazing in and of itself. But then beyond that, to have licensed the use of all of the different characters that they did, to see Daffy Duck and Donald Duck sharing a stage in that insane piano battle, and then the big epic moment for me of the movie to see Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny on a screen together fucking with Bob Hoskins was just incredible. It blew my mind. And in retrospect, that scene, that's all we see of Bugs and Mickey together until the very end of the movie. And it's kind of like, I'd like to see more, but you can't, because there's no way. What do they do to live up to the idea of these two iconic cartoon characters, two of the most famous fictional characters in the history of pop culture, sharing a screen? What do you do with them? Like, there's nothing. That's all you can do. You have them fuck with Bob Hoskins, and then the movie has to keep going. It can't grind to a halt for this important pop culture moment. But we went and saw this movie. It was everything I imagined and more, and at 12 years old, all the dirty innuendo went right over my head. That wouldn't, I wouldn't start picking up on some of that stuff until later. We get original characters like Baby Herman and the Weasels, and then, of course, nobody can forget the absolutely insane reveal. Christopher Lloyd as Judge Doom at the end of the movie is this terrifying, we never see the full Judge Doom character, but we see it come out from under the Christopher Lloyd mask. There's so much genius in this movie. I don't know that I'd ever want a sequel. I certainly wouldn't ever want any kind of remake. I think you could do something in the spirit of it, but this movie is just, it's one of the biggest things ever. And, when it gets brought up, people love it, but I don't know that it gets as much credit as it deserves. What about you guys? Did you guys see it in the theater? Do you revere this movie like I do?
Oh, yeah, I definitely saw this in the theater. This is one that, as I've mentioned and alluded to, when we first moved to Georgia, it was not a pleasant situation for young Sean. And unfortunately, in Georgia, we didn't have any relatives for my parents to send me off to. So it was, hey, let's go to the movies, and maybe you'll sit still and not be a pain in the ass for 2 hours. And
much like we try to get out of you here.
Yeah, some things never change 30 years later.
And it doesn't work for us either.
No, ever. Failed miserably back then, fails miserably now. But yeah, so my dad and I, Gwinnett Place Mall, actually, we went to one of the movie theaters out there at Gwinnett Place Mall, and saw Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And actually, I think I did sit still for 2 hours because that movie was fucking amazing, and my mind was just so blown. And much like you, Dave,
you were so overstimulated you couldn't move.
Yeah, it canceled out my ADHD. It was like, oh god, shit. There's not enough sugar to keep up with this. And then Judge Doom was just flat out fucking scary. Like, and I was not messing with horror movies as a kid because I was really easily scared. And then Christopher Lloyd's Judge Doom totally fucked with me. That was nightmares.
Well, the scene with the dip.
Yes,
he dipped the cartoon. He picks up that adorable little cartoon shoe, and murders it with the dip.
Just flat out kills it, and it's squealing, and it sounds like a puppy, and you're just like, look, between the feelings that Jessica Rabbit did in certain parts of the early pubescent Sean, and then the absolute just fear of Judge Doom, that I was on an emotional roller coaster for that entire film. And I was like, I both feel like a kid and not a kid, and this is strange.
Beth and Chris, what about you guys?
I enjoyed it. I remember seeing it in the theater. I don't think I revere it quite the same way you guys do. I haven't watched it in probably 15 years, but I did like it, and it is a good movie. I just,
Well, now, were you like a cartoon fiend growing up?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And it still didn't...
I was not a huge Warner Brothers or Disney fan, ever. I mean, I like Disney movies, but I wasn't a Mickey Mouse person.
Oh,
and
well,
I wasn't a Bugs Bunny person.
I mean, that's mostly what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it, and it looked great, and it was really cool, and of course, Christopher Lloyd was terrifying, but it didn't have that same impact on me, I guess, as it had on you.
Well, and I think if you're not specifically a fan of Looney Tunes and Merry Melodies, and those two main, the Disney and Warner Brothers stuff, then it couldn't be quite as magical. It could still be cool, but yeah, it would definitely, you'd have to have that background for it to really have the impact, I think. What about you, Chris?
I actually did see it in the theater. Going back to our first conversation, a couple of years younger than you guys, so I definitely didn't get the innuendo or anything. But to the cartoon point, that was the selling point for me. It's like, whoa, like all my favorite characters all in one spot. Like, what's going on? And there's new characters. Like, that was the big draw for me. It was like, what is this magical world that I'm seeing right here? And I had already seen things like horror movies and R-rated movies and stuff at that point. But Christopher Lloyd as Judge Doom was probably one of the freakier characters of my childhood, especially like that final scene where he starts morphing or whatever type of terminology you want to use.
Yeah.
Definitely a creepy standout among the world of other horror characters and whatever that I had already previously seen. But yeah, like, to your point of seeing Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck and Donald Duck all together, that was really what got me worked up about seeing the movie. It was like, how is this happening? Why are there no other cartoons like this? Like, this is a one-of-a-kind, once-in-a-million thing. This is awesome. And that was what I really enjoyed about it. I actually have the movie on DVD. I haven't watched it in a couple of years either. I think that's one that, even though Zach has attached himself to things that are way beyond his 3-year-old scope, I think we'll kind of wait a little while on that one. I'll just let him stick to the Three's Company reruns that he likes watching nowadays, because I think that Judge Doom might be a little too freaky for him. But that's one of those movies that I definitely want to enjoy with him when he gets a little older.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and Judge Doom, I mean, I think he would make any list. Anybody that was between like 8 and 12 when they first saw that movie, Judge Doom is probably on their like top 10 creepiest shit I saw in that age, that time frame. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a freaky character. All right, Beth, what is your first delight of 1988?
This was really tough for me, and looking over the list of all of pop culture, it seems like 87 was the year for music and 88 was the year for movies. So I narrowed down my list of movies to 3 or 4, and I'm going to start, and I may take somebody else's, but I'm going to start with Coming to America.
Oh, nice.
Classic movie.
I almost chose that one. That is, yeah.
I don't know how more iconic a movie you could get. There was a point in my life where I had to stop watching it because I knew all the words too well, and I couldn't watch it anymore because I could do the whole thing by heart. And it still holds up. I watched it with my dad a couple months ago. And it's still funny. It's even funnier, actually, if you've taken a few years off from watching it. And Eddie Murphy playing the bajillion parts that he plays is great. This was back when Eddie Murphy was still really funny, before he started making terrible movies. Arsenio Hall was actually once funny. If you've never seen it, please watch it, and you'll know that he was once funny.
Arsenio Hall was funny for a long time, though. I mean, I loved, and this again could be a whole episode, but his talk show changed everything.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of what he did was really forward-thinking and changed a lot and gave a lot of presence to, talking about hip-hop and breaking through in that year. Like, there were a lot of hip-hop artists that there was no way they were going to get picked up for Letterman's show yet.
Right.
Regular shows, they weren't ready for that. So, yeah, he did a lot of breaking through. That was the show that Arsenio show is the one that I watched the most. Like,
we'll do an episode on that, too.
Yeah.
I think he was highly influential to all of the late-night talk shows we watch now, but at the time, it was not my thing.
What, going into Coming to America, what was your awareness? Now, did you see it in 88, or was it
yes.
Okay. So
my parents were huge Eddie Murphy fans. They took us to see Raw and Delirious.
Oh my gosh.
Which was extremely inappropriate for the time.
Right.
And there were even parts of Coming to America where I was like, I don't understand that joke, but okay. I mean, I am older than everyone else here, so I got most of the jokes and the references, but there were still some where I was like, should I go watching this?
Now, had you seen Trading Places at that point?
Of course.
To get the joke with the rich guys, or the no longer rich guys, I should say,
Randolph
landed for you. Yes.
Oh yeah, no, I got all of that. All of his little nods and things that he does. I believe most of them at the time.
Well, and another thing to point out is that, Eddie Murphy played several different characters in the movie, but this was before that was his thing. Like, it was, other than Saturday Night Live, obviously, but doing that in a movie at the time was something that was very different and still somewhat innovative.
Well, it was before Martin Lawrence and Tyler Perry and all of that happened, so he was the first one to do that. And he was really successful because when I first saw it, I did not realize he was the old Jewish man in the barbershop.
Aha!
Aha!
Awesome. Anything else to say about Coming to America? Anybody?
That was and I have no idea because it was rated R, but somehow this was the first movie I saw in theaters unsupervised.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. I somehow I saw it with I think with my neighbor, and we got into, I think his parents bought us tickets to Coming to America, and we were just two 12-year-olds watching Coming to America in the theater and laughing at everything that was a dick joke because we didn't get a lot of the other stuff.
That's amazing. So he's in the bathtub with his ladies cleansing him, and 12-year-old Sean is just like, someday I will.
One of these days. The
royal penis is clean, sire.
That big.
Yeah, I didn't see Coming to America probably until a few years after it came out. But at one point, I've mentioned before on the show this bizarre phenomenon of Waiter on Wheels, where after high school, me and all my friends hung out at this food delivery place that obviously predates Uber Eats or anything like that. It was Waiter on Wheels, and it was run out of a condo, and they didn't have cable because the guy that ran it had no money whatsoever because he had teenagers delivering food to people. But all we had to watch was...
This sounds like a front for something.
It does. It sounds like a front for this guy, diddling minors, but that was...
I was going to say, it sounds like the start to a really bad story.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not at all. It was a totally safe place.
Did he own a bicycle shop that Gary Coleman went to at one point?
There was the one time that he had us take a bath while he took pictures. It was really weird. Other than that, though, no, it was a bizarrely safe place where we hung out, and but all we had to watch was like 8 VHS tapes full of Simpsons episodes, whatever we rented from the Blockbuster across the street, and then Coming to America and like 2 other movies. I think maybe They Live and something else. I don't remember what the other one was. But Coming to America, it was funny, Beth, when you were talking about like having to take a break from it for a while. I had to do the same thing because I probably saw that movie 30 times in a year. And I had to take a few years off. But, I mean, we would quote it constantly. It was always, we would always be able to find some kind of reference to something that was going on and find a quote from that movie. It's an incredible movie. And again, I think they're remaking it now.
Oh, no.
I think there's a sequel coming up. Where I read something.
A sequel, I'd be okay with if you get Arsenio and Eddie Murphy back, and do something with them. I'm fine with that. But I don't want a remake with like Kevin Hart and the guy from Kenan and Kel or whatever it is they would do.
The Rock is Prince Akeem.
Well, I'll watch anything with The Rock in it. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, let's be honest.
All right. So any final thoughts on Coming to America?
I actually still have the original VHS tape in my collection.
Nice.
Because this is going back to when I had mentioned again, going back to my cousins, they would tape everything or buy movies as soon as they came out or whatever. So Coming to America was one of their favorite things. Like you guys had mentioned earlier, Eddie Murphy Raw, Delirious, Trading Places. Those were all things I had already seen at that point because my cousins were like Eddie Murphy obsessed. I thought Trading Places was hysterical. And Coming to America, I remember my cousin buying it like as soon as he was able to, excuse me, which was rare because he would normally just tape the movies off TV, but he was so obsessed with it. And even when I scaled down my VHS collection, when I went from about 500 to 50, I was like, well, what do I want to keep on VHS? And even though I've got it on DVD, I'm like, this is kind of like the sentimental comedy favorite.
Yeah.
Like I really don't want to get rid of it because we laughed, we quoted it. I'll never forget, like, growing up, anytime somebody said, hey, fuck you, the response would just be, yes, fuck you too. So it was definitely a part of my lingo. It was definitely a part of my growing up. I wouldn't call it my favorite comedy of all time, but easily top 5, top 10. It's right up there.
Nice. Well, let's just keep you going and move on to your second favorite thing from 1988.
All right, second favorite thing. Are we doing the favorite or are we doing the hated?
We're going to go ahead and do we're doing well. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can get 3 favorites and 1 not so favorite in there. So go ahead for another favorite.
All right, so following the pattern of things that are sentimental to me, 1988 brought back to television something that is very near and dear to my heart for many, many reasons, and that was NBC reviving my favorite character of all time, bringing Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno back for The Incredible Hulk returns.
Oh, wow. Nice. Okay.
So the reason I say it's sentimental is because you guys have heard me talk. I remember things that I probably shouldn't have seen and done things that I probably shouldn't have did. But one of my first memories, and this goes back to when I was about 2-3 years old, is getting the original Mego Hulk doll as a present from my grandparents, the one with the torn white shirt and everything, the 12-inch Mego Hulk, a toy that I still have to this day. That's like
a running theme on this show, I kid you not. There are no less than 3 guests that Mego Hulk has some kind of like massive sentimental meaning to them.
That is what kickstarted my entire Hulk fandom to this day, and what happened, how it transcended, I'm really not sure of how we got to this point, but what happened as I was growing up in the early 80s was we had a house, so, Chris DePetrillo, big Italian family, the stereotype is real, and we had a 3-family house that we all lived in. So normally like a 3-family house, you figure kids are renting it out, floor by floor or whatever. It was our house. Our family owned it. It was all our family. So that's why I was always with my cousins all the time. My aunt and uncle were on the first floor. My grandparents were on the 3rd floor. My other uncle was on the 2nd floor. Me and my mom and dad, we were on the 3rd floor until my dad got a job with another fire department a couple of cities over. So we moved about 10 minutes away. Excuse me. So not far away, still close to the family, still saw them all the time. Every weekend.
That's beautiful. I've got to stop you because as a kid, like I would have thought that was terrible, but 42-year-old me wishes I had had that. Like, that sounds so beautiful and so awesome.
It was great. It was one of my fondest memories, just growing up that way. I mean, this is a family that, to this day, my aunt cooks Sunday dinner for everybody just to make sure they take a day out of their lives to all get together at her house still.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So very, very tight-knit, very Italian, very, strong bond within the family. And my grandparents, other than my parents, my grandparents were the closest relatives to me. I mean, I love my grandmother like no other. And what they would do every Saturday was they would come and pick me up at home. We would go to Child World, if not Toys R Us. I would get to run amok and choose whatever I wanted, G.I. Joes, He-Man, wrestlers, whatever I wanted. They'd get me a couple of things. This was every Saturday. Every Saturday was like Christmas. And then my family owns bakeries, so my grandmother would work in the bakery, and she would usually have to get to work between like 3 and 3:30, and she didn't drive, so my papa would always have to drive her. So the rule of thumb was, we'll go to the store, we got to get back to the house for your grandmother to change up, we're going to bring her to work, but we had to make sure that after we dropped her off, we got right home, because at 4 o'clock on the Fox affiliate out of Boston was the reruns of the Incredible Hulk TV show.
Yes.
And so every Saturday, my papa and I just sat in their part of the house, and we turned the world off. Nobody could bother us. We weren't going down for dinner. We weren't doing anything until the Hulk ended. And that's how I first was exposed to the Hulk TV show, just watching every episode with my papa. And now, so this is 84, 85 or so. I'm like 4 or 5 years old. My papa passed away in 1986. So he was like the first, not only the first death in the family that I dealt with, but it was literally one of the closest people to me. So I'm not young enough to understand it, but it still rattled me to an extent. And I always associated the Hulk with my papa, because that was what my grandparents did. It was like, all Hulk stuff. And up until the point where she passed away, which was in 2013, if my grandmother saw like a Hulk coloring book on the magazine rack at the supermarket, I'd be like 25 years old. I bought you something. And it's a Hulk. Like, I had the room in my house that is now Zach's room. It used to be called the Hulk room, because it was just shelves of Incredible Hulk memorabilia, figures, books, VHS tapes. I have pretty much all of my Hulk stuff still. Didn't really get rid of anything. Some of the supplemental characters, but especially anything that she bought or that they bought, I would never get rid of. So here it is, 1988. My papa, unfortunately, is no longer around, but all the memories came flooding back to this, 8-year-old kid, because now, this is before the days of DVDs and, seasons on VHS tapes, or even like the Columbia House releasing 2 to 3 episodes at a time. The Hulk TV show at the time wasn't really being rerun anywhere. So the fact that it was coming back, and it was coming back new, and then for me, who was already heavily invested into comics at this point, seeing another character, meaning the first crossover being Thor in this movie.
Yes.
It was like, holy crap, like, what is this magic I'm witnessing? And, if you watch it when you're older, you're kind of like, okay, well, Don Blake and Thor are 2 separate entities. Like, what, he's possessed by the hammer. Okay, like, they're kind of tweaking with the story. But, I mean, it's a TV movie. You're not going to get an Avengers-level budget, especially back then. But it was just a fantastic return to form. And I remember as a kid, I love the Hulk. But for some reason, the point of the transformation where Bill Bixby has the contacts in his eyes always kind of freaked me out. And at this point, like, I didn't even care. Like, here I am. Excuse me. Apologize for the cough. Here I am, 8 years old. I don't care about the contacts. I don't care about anything that might be slightly scary. I just want to see the Hulk back on my TV screen. And I think it was a fun movie. It was cool to get another Marvel character. I think the fights for what they are within the Hulk lore, because they weren't ever really violent fights, just kind of tossing guys around.
Yeah.
It was just a really, to steal wrestling terminology, it was kind of like a big mark-out moment for me for that movie to come back. And I love that movie, like I don't love many other things because of the sentimental attachment to the Incredible Hulk as a whole. Definitely one of my favorite things of 1988 and in general.
That's fantastic. And I remember as well the hype surrounding that, because at the time, again, this is 30 years ago, we didn't get reboots. We didn't really get, like, a few years after something had been done, because the original show ended, was
in 82.
Yeah, 82.
6 years
so
earlier.
6 years, like, if something's been dead for 6 years, it's pretty much done. And I remember being so excited for that. It was it a Sunday evening special?
Yeah, it was one of the NBC Movie of the Week. And in fact, I remember, because of course I had to tape it, because I tape everything, but especially this. But I remember they used to have those little, like, advertisements right before it started. And they're like, now on NBC, like, like the moment you've been waiting for. And it was like that little 30-second clip. And just like that 30-second clip of like them showing like Bill Bixby starting to transform and stuff, it was just like, it's coming. It's real. It's really happening. It's not a joke. And just that excitement carried with me. I mean, the Hulk transformation sequence is something that carries excitement with it no matter what the episode, but there was just something about seeing it again for the first time, seeing it new, seeing it fresh, and then again having like another hero to play off of. It was the first time the Hulk battled Thor until we got to the Avengers, almost 20 years later. So,
well, and that's the thing is I remember, two specific things. One, having sort of a vague sense of continuity, I remember thinking, man, he's still the Hulk. Like, the idea that David Banner was still dealing with this 6 years after the show had ended narratively was big. Right.
Yep.
And also, I remember watching it and being infuriated by the commercials because I was like, this is a movie. I'm watching a movie. Why are there commercials in this damn thing? Because I recorded it on VHS, and I would be so irritated when I would go back and watch it later and have to fast forward through the damn commercials. And of course, now it's available in I think a couple of different formats as more of a feature-length, uninterrupted thing. But at the time, commercials were just the bane of my existence. I hated them. And I remember being very frustrated by the commercials in that thing.
I used to do that thing where you would hit the pause button while it's recording, but then you still have to wait there for the commercials to end to hit the pause button again. So it's just kind of like a catch-22.
Yeah, my attention span was not good enough for me to pause during the commercials usually, because I would be too paranoid that I would forget to unpause when it came back. So I'd just leave it recording. Sean and Beth, what about you guys? Do you remember Return of the Incredible Hulk?
Go ahead, Beth.
Oh, I was going to say I have no memory of this. I watched The Incredible Hulk when I was a kid, and anything else they did after that, I have no idea. I just looked it up, never heard of it, didn't know what happened.
Wow, really?
Just found out right now.
So none of the TV movies, not the one with Daredevil or the one where he fell out of the plane? Really? Wow.
Nothing.
Wow. I
wasn't really into superheroes back then. I mean, I was reading X-Men comics, but that was about it. But yeah, I had no clue.
You need to get educated
tonight.
What about you, Sean?
This is one of those weird times where I'm not the one that hasn't heard of it.
Right.
We went into Bizarro land somehow. I don't remember watching this as a kid, although I'm certain that I had to have, because I watched everything that had the Hulk in it. I was obsessed with the Hulk and Lou Ferrigno, particularly after he came on Mr. Rogers, and I was like, he's the coolest guy ever. So I'm certain I had to watch it as a kid, but it was one of those things that when I saw it later, I was like, oh, shit, this is a thing that exists, and I totally need to watch this. And so now it's something I remember more from having watched it later, but I can almost guarantee that I was sitting like you guys on the couch, glued to the television, excited for what was about to happen when it initially aired.
Yeah, it was huge. I mean, this was a big deal. I love it. All right, I'm going to take the next one, and I'm going to cheat a little bit because this is not something that I found in 1988 when it was released. I didn't get it until a year later, and that's because a year later I was buying every single Batman thing I could possibly get my hands on, and one of those things was Batman: The Killing Joke by Alan Moore, Brian Boland, and this is the original version with John Higgins on the color, not the re-release that they did recently with Brian Boland providing the color that he originally thought it should be. This thing was, and I hate to say this, my memory's a little foggy. I can't remember which comic exactly was the one where I was like, oh my gosh, there are titties in comic books. What? But this was definitely one of the first ones with graphic violence and horrid, disturbing sexual situations, and just this changed who I was as a person, because this Batman character that I'd known since I was an infant, that I had watched Adam West's television show, and I'd had the Mego action figures, and, you know, I had known Batman for so long as this very specific type of character from Super Friends and from teaming up with Scooby-Doo, and now I'm reading this very adult comic that's one of the most graphic things I'd ever seen, with these lurid pictures. And for me, I'm happy to have the remastered version that has the different color style in it. Have you guys seen this? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think that's the copy that I have, is the updated one.
This I'm holding in my hands right now, my original copy of The Killing Joke that I got in 1989.
Oh, wow.
With the John Higgins color, and it's bright, and it's very 80s, and it's very outlandish, and honestly, to me, the story is all the more disturbing for these bright colors and these jarring differences in palette that are present throughout the thing. But then a few years ago, they did sort of a director's cut type of thing with the colors that Brian Boland originally envisioned. But this one, man, I mean, this is one of the things, and it's not looked at as fondly now. Obviously, our political climate at the time, there's some ideas and some concepts in here that people don't care for very much. But this is a huge comic. It's a definitive part of my personal Batman storyline, timeline, whatever you want to call it, my idea of what Batman is, and my idea of what comics can be. We see the Joker in a way that, you know, Cesar Romero never was. You never saw him do this, and I think it's very important. I don't like the idea that there are people that want this scrubbed from history, because I think it's important to see villains doing villainous things. I don't think it's okay, the idea that we sanitize our villains because we might offend people's sensibilities. We need to see, you know, as a 13-year-old, when I read this, you know, this horrified me. And it clued me into the fact that the Joker, you know, wasn't necessarily this cutesy laughing buffoon guy, that he could be evil, and that evil things like this, like nothing that happens in this comic is outside the realm of reality. And just like I'm not crazy about the idea of a cartoon about war where nobody ever dies, I'm not crazy about the idea of comic books where there are evil acts that are off limits because they might upset someone. I think our fiction needs to be able to tell stories. It needs to be able to be these morality plays. It needs to be able to dig deep into the psyche of the characters involved. And this book does all of that, and is one of the first ones, if not the first one, that really gave me a glimpse at just how impactful and informative comic books can be. So that's Killing Joke. It's amazing. And I'm not, there's nothing like cool or like aspirational about anything that the Joker does in this book. It's horror. It's horrible. And I think it's important to keep that element of storytelling around. I assume you guys have all read it.
Yes, I've actually read this one.
Yay!
And I never read DC.
Oh.
I know. But I think I probably read it when I was living with you, and it was probably your copy, so That's when I read it.
Right.
But I liked it enough that I even watched the animated one they did a couple years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that unfortunately is. Here's
the thing.
It wasn't good.
Here's the thing, though. The portion of it that adapted the actual comic was very good. It's all the crap that they added that was horrible.
Yeah.
And it also had the old actors. So Mark Hamill as the Joker that's my Joker.
It was a little upsetting, though, hearing Hamill and Conroy in this
out in garbage.
Yeah, well, because Batman the Animated Series is pretty tame, and this takes it up quite a few notches, and it was almost like it wasn't the same level of disturbing as Batman XXX, but it was definitely like in that neighborhood. Because I don't know if you've seen Batman XXX, it is a very faithful recreation of the original Adam West Batman show, but it's a porno, and it's honestly a little upsetting.
I've not seen that.
It's a little upsetting to watch. It's too good, and that was like watching The Killing Joke, seeing these people voicing this different iteration of these characters was almost like, no, my brain, I don't need that. What about you, Sean? You've read the comic and seen The Thing?
Oh yeah, I've read the comic and seen The Thing, and it's much like you said. I don't think it's something that should be scrubbed. I don't agree with that at all. It's like a lot of Alan Moore work. It's something that suffers for the people that came after Moore and copied him oftentimes poorly.
Yeah.
And so we get, there's so many more bad Alan Moore copies that have now almost tainted how people see Alan Moore, because if that's the guy that inspired this shit, then he must really be awful, and it doesn't necessarily get the fair shake. When he was doing a lot of this stuff and a lot of the more problematic stuff, it wasn't common then. It was still kind of like, oh shit, this is actually shocking and not just shocking for shocking's sake because this is how we write bad guys. It hadn't become cliche at the time. So I'm totally on board with, this is something that needs to stay kind of the way it is. And I would love to get my hands on the John Higgins colors and having it have that weird Watchmen feel to it. But I do appreciate the color change that they did. I don't mind. But,
it's good.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they did a good job.
But man, for me, the full impact of the story comes from that particular palette that's in the original.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it makes everything even more. It throws everything off, right? Like you expect to see things as a certain color, and so it makes the entire experience off-putting from the get-go.
Well, and it sets it apart from other comic books, which is very important, because when you look at the recolored edition, it just looks like everything else. But this one is a different thing. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is just a Batman story that's from the comics. It feels like a different thing.
Yeah, you're not going to pick it up and think it's just like an Elseworlds or anything like that. You really do feel like this is a thing that lives. And part of me wishes that they would have just kept it off in its own little world and never tried to bring that into any of modern continuity for Batman at all, because I think it does do a really good job standing on its own.
What about you, Chris?
It's a fantastic book. It's not something that I read when I was 8 or in 1988. I was just dealing more with the regular mainstream comics and not so much with the one-shots and the graphic novels at that point.
Sure.
But reading it later on, I think I had a better appreciation for it reading it later on, because if I read it as a kid, I probably would have been like, what's this? I don't think I wouldn't have gotten it. It wouldn't have had the impact that it had when I'm older and more understanding of it. But it's sitting there on my bookshelf. It's definitely one of my favorite stories.
Sean, it is your turn to pick your second favorite thing from 1988.
All right, so this one was kind of a toss-up between just going with the obvious and saying, well, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle figures came out in 1988, and I was all over that shit. But I feel like we've talked about Ninja Turtles before, and I'm pretty sure I did an episode with you where that's all we talked about was Ninja Turtles. So Instead, I'm going to go with something else that is not necessarily a favorite, as in, man, this is something I want to see all the time, but the nostalgia for this is strong, and the feeling that like it was everywhere, and that was the Land Before Time movie.
Oh, okay.
And even more important than the movie, because again, I apparently saw a lot of movies in the theater in 1988. I think I was finally allowed out of the house. I definitely remember seeing this in the theater, and more importantly, I remember the Land Before Time puppets that we had all gotten from Pizza Hut.
Yes.
That we took with us, and we were acting out the movie while we were watching the movie. And that was one, I mean, obviously when we were kids in the 80s, and even a little bit into the 90s, the cross-promotional marketing was everywhere, right? You couldn't get away from a Happy Meal.
Phenomenal.
Right? It was great. We had some of the best damn Happy Meal toys. Yeah. I had entire Lego systems built just from Happy Meal toys.
They were trying to make us so fat, and looking down at myself, they succeeded.
They absolutely succeeded. But yeah, so these, and they were actually really good. Like, if I remember correctly, they were really high-quality puppets that you got from a pizza place. And I don't remember Pizza Hut. You know, McDonald's we went to all the time. Burger King we went to all the time. Pizza Hut was not a regular stop for us, but I remember seeing this. I was like, Mom and Dad, we got to go to Pizza Hut because I want a dinosaur puppet right now. And then, of course, Land Before Time. It's a great movie. It's Amblin Entertainment. It's Spielberg. It's Lucas. It's Don Bluth Animation, which was basically the only you had three animation studios as far as I was concerned when you was a kid. You had Don Bluth, who was that guy whose name I didn't know until I was an adult, but I liked his stuff.
Right.
Land Before Time and Fievel and all that stuff. Then Warner Brothers and Disney, which had been around since time immemorial. And so I was like, oh, this is that other thing that I like that's really good. So we went and saw that one in the theaters, had the puppets, and I'm pretty sure I managed to get all of the puppets, like every last one of them. And I think there were like 4 or 5 of them. Yeah, 4 of them. I just looked it up. Yeah, so and I had all 4 of them. I don't know how I convinced my parents to go to Pizza Hut 4 times.
Oh, I do. I'll wait till you're done, but I know.
Oh, well, good. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it over to you then, because I now I want to hear this.
So Pizza Hut was not a regular stop for us either. But I had, in 1988, my sister was 4 years old. Prime age for Land Before Time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And she wanted those puppets like crazy. And me, being a 12-year-old who never really grew up in any significant way, wanted the puppets too, but like couldn't admit that I wanted the puppets. And this is a guy who was still like, at this time, I don't think I was playing with G.I. Joes still. I think they had lost me. I think 87 is when G.I. Joe lost me. But Ninja Turtles were creeping in and a couple other things. But Pizza Hut, if you went there and dined in, had a buffet that had pasta and pizza and salad. And so my sister, wanting those puppets, we, like, once a week for 4 weeks, however long it took to get all the puppets, we would go out to the Pizza Hut buffet because my dad loved their buffet. My mom obviously didn't want to have to cook dinner every single night, which she pretty much did, but it was nice to have a night off. So, like, everybody got a little something out of going to the Pizza Hut buffet. Oh, and they had a tabletop centipede there that I played every single time we went, because that's my favorite arcade game of all time. But we got, for my sister, she had, like you said, I guess all 4 of the puppets, and they were great. They were these great glove puppets, rubber glove puppets, with really nice paint jobs. There was actually blending on the bodies. The eyes were this glossy white. They looked very, very much like the animation that they were based on. They were high-quality toys, and Pizza Hut didn't do a ton of premiums like that back in the day, so it was kind of a big deal that they had these. But yeah, it's funny you bring this up, and I hadn't even thought about this until you did, but yeah, we had a month straight of Pizza Hut buffet visits just to get those little puppets. Yeah,
and that's probably because, my sister, let's see, my brother would have been 8, and my sister would have been 4.
Oh, and
yeah. So perfect perfect demographic. And then just, getting, my mom was another one that was making dinner just about every night. So selling her on like, hey, we can go and get a lot of pizza was probably a lot easier sell than I remember it being.
Yes, absolutely.
And then I was like, and probably to be perfectly honest, I also made sure to get puppets for my brother and sister who weren't really into toys. And so I just kind of absconded with them at some point. It was like, I'll just keep these in my room. Right, and so that's also probably how I ended up with a few of them.
Yeah, I definitely was playing with those things pretty frequently, even though they maybe weren't mine. Chris, you might have been still kind of at the target age for Land Before Time. Was this a thing for you?
Land Before Time was not a thing for me. As a matter of fact, we didn't get the VHS tape until maybe like a couple years later for Christmas because my sister had seen it on TV and she wanted it. And so we had the VHS, but I think I might have watched it like once in my life. It just wasn't really a big thing for me.
Well, you'd already seen horror movies and stuff at this point, so little animated dinosaurs were maybe not in your wheelhouse.
Sharptooth was not scary at all.
They were, I was watching, my tape of Revenge of the Ninja and the Terminator upstairs.
Right. That's great.
I was, but it's funny because I've always been a cartoon fan, so animation, especially a feature-length movie, and especially having a younger sister, she's 5 years younger than me, so we went to the cinema for Disney movies and An American Tail and all the different stuff like that. But Land Before Time, for whatever reason, we didn't go to the cinema. She didn't see it until it was on TV. And at that point, I was like, all right, whatever. Like, I was probably like 10, 11 when we got the VHS tape. And at that point, forget it. Now I'm into like sitcoms and, all the other stuff. Like I'm growing. Whereas nowadays I sit and watch Tom and Jerry for 2 hours almost every night. So,
well, and that's funny because I don't know that I've ever actually seen any of the, 8 Land Before Time movies.
They started doing the direct-to-video sequels and all that stuff.
There are more of them than you think there are. Beth, I'm just going to assume you don't even know what we're talking about.
I do. You and Sean are making me feel like I'm about 90, though, because I was certainly not playing with Pizza Hut puppet toys in 1988.
You're not playing with children's rubber puppets? In 1988?
Now, to be fair, Dave and I would be playing with children's puppets regardless of
probably right,
nonstop.
Probably right now.
Years. No, I'm fiddling around with the time thing from Harry Potter. I can't remember what it's called.
Time Turner.
Yeah, whatever Hermione uses to. It's a great desk trinket.
That's what Terry would call a dork test. And I just failed. I watched The Land Before Time on VHS when I was babysitting.
There you go.
So I watched it with a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, and they cried pretty much the entire way through because everything was scary when you're 2 and 3 years old. So at that time and place, I was just like, everybody shut the fuck up. Make the scary monsters go away so these kids will shut up and go to sleep.
Let's find a different movie that's not as upsetting.
Everything is upsetting when you're 2.
I'm willing to bet, Beth, if we did an informal poll of women your age, the number of them that watched The Land Before Time while babysitting is probably greater than 50%.
Oh, for sure.
I'm certain it's high.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was the first job any of us ever had.
All right, well, Beth, we're going to stick with you. What is your second favorite thing of 1988?
Sticking with the adult themes and not the children's themes, I'm going...
What are you trying to say?
Hey, nothing. I'm not judging.
I feel besmirched.
Yeah, in fairness, you always feel that way.
Oh, that's true.
I am going with Heathers. Which I actually saw in the theater.
No kidding. Wow.
I don't know how I saw it in the theater. I saw it with a group of girls I hung out with. Whenever it came out, I saw the trailer for it and was like, meh. But they all wanted to go real bad, and they ended up hating it, and I loved it.
Oh, isn't that great? You're, like, vindicated for, like, I went, and now I'm the one that gets it.
They hated. They thought it was going to be a cute high school rom-com kind of thing, and of course it was so much darker. And being the dark person that I am, I immediately was on board with that. And again, it's another one of those movies where I had to take a nice break from because I couldn't stop quoting it for a very long time. Anytime anyone ever would talk about somebody dying, I love my dead gay son. And my teen angst bullshit has a body count and big fun, teenage suicide, don't do it. Could not stop talking about that stuff for a long time. And, of course, the people I hung out with did not get it, so they did not want to talk to me for quite a while after that. But it still holds up. It's still funny. At the time, of course, Christian Slater was not the train wreck he is today. So, hey, it's that guy from Gleaming the Cube.
Is he a train wreck now? I didn't know that.
I believe he is.
Oh, no.
Or at least he just looks like one.
That's so disappointing.
Yeah, because didn't he just have a show not long ago? That, Breaking In show? Wasn't that him?
Yeah, Breaking In was great. I love that show. It was like Mr. Robot comedy.
And it took place in the same universe as Prison Break, I think.
Yes, I think you're right.
I think they carried over, a character from Prison Break or something for an episode.
Yeah.
He might have pulled it together, but for a little while there, he was Val Kilmer rough.
Oh, no.
Oof, that's brutal.
I actually just bought a movie at the dollar store that he was in with Sean Bean and Ving Rhames called Soldiers of Fortune.
Oh, did Sean Bean die?
I have not watched it. I have not watched it yet, so I cannot say yes or no to that, but my guess would be based on previous statistics, probably.
So I didn't see Heathers until a long time. As a matter of fact, it might have been at Waiter on Wheels that I was talking about before. And I didn't watch it for a long time because my assumption, oddly enough, was the same as your friends, that it would be some kind of teenage rom-com that I wouldn't be very interested in. And then once I did see it, I was like, oh, this is good. Look at this Christian Slater guy go. And actually, I probably had already seen, what is the movie that Tarantino wrote but did not direct, Christian Slater and...
Oh, True Romance.
True Romance, thank you. I think I had already seen True Romance before I saw Heathers, and it was a matter of Christian Slater and Winona Ryder are cool. I guess I'll watch this movie, even though it looks like some lame teenage, Pretty in Pink bullshit. And then watched it, and I was like, oh, that was pretty messed up. Good. I like that. Sean and Chris, what about you guys?
I didn't see Heathers till later. I think I caught it on video. I didn't see it in theaters. And it's weird because I was all in on all of those weird coming-of-age high school movies. So I feel like that should have been one that I did see. But no, I caught it. I think I was probably at a friend's, at a party or something. It was playing in the background. I was like, what is this crazy thing? And oh, it's Heathers. You should watch it. And eventually I did. And I was all in on Christian Slater. I mean, Gleaming the Cube and Pump Up the Volume and all that stuff. I was like, that's me. I relate to this character. I was having an identity crisis.
See, I'm the polar opposite of everybody because when I was a kid, I'm still obsessed with high school coming-of-age things and stuff like that. So I'm like, this movie's weird. This isn't Morgan Stewart's Coming Home. What is this? I didn't grasp the concept of, dark comedy and all that stuff. And I think I've only seen Heathers maybe 2 or 3 times in adulthood despite owning it on DVD. I've only watched it a handful of times. It's one of those movies that I've watched and I'm like, okay, so it's good. I get it now, but I'm never in a rush to rewatch it.
In the same way, I've seen it maybe 3 to 5 times, something like that. And, and it's like you said, I get it. Okay. I'm good. It's not a yearly or even every 5 years visit for me, especially at this point.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see. It's time. Are you guys ready to talk about some things we didn't like?
Oh, yeah.
Thing.
All right, I'm going to kick this off. I apologize in advance to the listeners. I apologize in advance to you guys because I'm about to ruin your day. Because the thing from 1988 that I would say I hate. This was just generally going to be things we dislike, because I feel like hate is a very strong word, but hate is really the only word for the song Kokomo. The ever-present, just saccharine, totally uninteresting, awful, the Beach Boys, for me, one of the top 10 bands of all time, prior to Kokomo anyway. Matter of fact, Kokomo could almost knock them out of that by itself. This song is such a drizzling piece of garbage, and it was everywhere. It was on the oldie stations. It was on the top 40 stations. It was on fucking Full House. It was everywhere. And it's
John Stamos couldn't save it for you, could he?
No, not even the mighty Greek god Stamos could salvage this horrible, horrible earworm piece of shit. I loathe this song. I never want to think about it. I never want to hear it again. I hated it back then. I hate it now. It's one of the worst fucking things that's ever been recorded. Do you guys remember the fucking omnipresence of Kokomo back in the day?
Oh, very much so, especially being an 8-year-old whose mother controlled the radio in the car.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, like, God forbid I turn on the rap channel. You can't listen to this stuff, but I have that CD at home. Well, I didn't buy it for you.
Here's more Kokomo.
I loved Kokomo.
No!
I was all about that.
Sean! I'm ejecting you from the show. Bad Sean.
I was a sucker that anything that even remotely had anything to do with the beach, and I was kind of jealous of Tom Cruise, how cool Tom Cruise was in Cocktail.
Beach Boys have 8 million other great songs about the beach. You don't have to listen to this one.
It's because they were the Beach Boys.
Right.
And they had Uncle Jesse, and it was, I don't know, and I remember I vividly remember debates with my younger brother because we did not know what most of those words were. And we're like, no, it's this. It's like, and he's like, no, it's Martinique. I want a rotten steak. And I'm like, that doesn't even make any sense. Yeah. So I was a big fan. I was like, I'm fine with this. This is a good one. I had a few like top 40 pop songs, and I was like, no, that's good. I'm fine with that. When I wasn't listening to Public Enemy or Anthrax. And that was one of them. I was fine with that one. I was like, oh, that's good. I'm good.
I like a lot of cornball, cheesy, heavily manufactured, what people would call pop crap. I've got about 36,000 songs in my iTunes library, and Kokomo is not one of them.
No sterner indictment will be had this evening.
My husband listens to Taylor Swift and Katy Perry, and he would slap you for this.
Yeah. and now it's stuck in everybody's head, and for that I should spend an eternity in hell. All right.
Now we're just at tourist agency right now.
All right, Chris, what from 1988 do you take issue with?
All right, so I know I had mentioned in our little group chat about kind of bending the rule a little bit. So this is going to go based on how I felt about this in 1988 at the moment in time, where I discovered it, where I saw it. So I'm putting myself back into my 8-year-old body. But my dislike from 1988 would be Child's Play.
Oh.
And I will explain why, because as we've discussed in this podcast and in others, growing up around my cousins, I was witness to many a movie that I should not have seen. At this point in my life, I had already seen Friday the 13th. I thought Friday the 13th Part 6 was great to this day. It's my favorite one in the series. I had seen Freddy Krueger. I had seen ninja movies. I had seen bloodshed. I had seen naked bodies. I had seen everything an 8-year-old should be kept far, far away from. And now here comes this movie. And the way movies would be explained to me when I was a kid was my cousins would be like, all right, if it gets a little too crazy, you're going to hide your eyes, or I'll tell you to leave the room for a minute or whatever. So my cousin has a VHS tape from the video store. And he's like, hey, you want to come watch a movie? I'm like, okay, what is it? He's like, well, this doll hurts people. It's kind of like a bad doll guy. I'm like, okay, all right, whatever. I know what dolls are. How bad could it be? And the couches that we had in the living room, my cousin decides to take my younger cousin's My Buddy doll and prop it up on the couch in a seated position.
Oh.
So if you remember the first Child's Play, it's not, hey, it's Chucky. It's more of a psychological torture for that first hour or so where you just see the shadows and the hands and is Andy doing this, what's going on. So, of course, I don't get that aspect of it. I just know I'm not seeing anything totally creepy that's freaking me out. And when Catherine Hicks picks him up and finds no batteries in him and he starts flipping out, I felt my soul leave my body. And all I could see was the My Buddy doll sitting next to me, coming to life and attacking me. So I promptly punched it and threw it behind the couch and went running, screaming for my aunt. This experience traumatized me for a literal decade, because when Child's Play 2 came out, I first found out that was coming out by a commercial airing on television, and I promptly turned my head and could not look at the screen. I could literally not look at Chucky. Anytime I went to the video store, if I wanted to go down the horror aisle, an aisle that I had been down a million times before, I could not walk past the C's without turning my head. I could not look at the box art of any Child's Play movie. Oh. When Part 3 came out, there was a video store on the way home to my house, actually from my aunt's house. What poster did they have front and center in the window? The big face, which was the poster art for Part 3. So I used to see that all the time. Some nights coming home from my aunt's house after midnight. So what's a half-asleep 8-year-old kid, or at that point, 11-year-old kid want to see? Not a big, giant Chucky face staring in his face at a red light. So, excuse me. It was literally not until I went to see the first Rush Hour in theaters that there was a trailer for Bride of Chucky, and that was the first time in my life, at 17 years old, almost 18 years old, I had ever actually watched Chucky for more than 5 seconds on screen since the initial viewing of Child's Play.
Wow.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this is the shit I was afraid of? And it became like a running gag that, Rush Hour was like my Child's Play intervention, and now like I was cured. So actually for in 1998, Bride of Chucky came out on October 16th, 1998. I remember that date because that was the date that I finally found the Garbage Pail Kids movie at a video store and rented it and bootlegged it after my searching for years over that one. But I saw Bride of Chucky opening night in the theaters, and then that Christmas, one of my friends bought me Part 1 and Part 2 on VHS, and I went out to Seattle for the first time that year because a good friend of mine that I had grown up with had just moved out there, so we spent New Year's out in Seattle. And his girlfriend worked at a Safeway. And the Safeway, this is when the supermarkets had the video stores inside them. And, he was one of my best friends, so he was busting my chops about, hey, you're not a pussy anymore. You're watching Chucky. Hey, good for you. And I'm like, when I get home, I got to go buy Part 3 because so-and-so gave me Part 1 and 2 for Christmas. Well, his girlfriend, sweetheart that she was, went to work, checked out Part 3 and deleted it from the system and actually stole it from the Safeway video store so that I could have it. So in that VHS collection that I still maintain, I have a Safeway rental copy of Child's Play 3 that was stolen by my friend's girlfriend so that I could have the complete Chucky collection once I overcame my fear.
That is fantastic.
So it went from terrorizing to sentimental, but if we are looking at this in 1988 eyes,
sure,
it scarred me for a decade. I literally could not look at print. I could not look at screen. I could not look at anything involving Chucky.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. I love that. I love the stuff that scarred us that we're able to look back on and be like, okay, I get it now.
If I come across it on television, even though I own it, I've seen it a million times, it will still make me jump a little bit. Just like there's something in my system, in my psyche, that makes me like just, oh, it's just Chucky, okay.
Well,
but I get like that little split second.
Well, and it doesn't help that it has legitimately great jump scares in it. I mean, it is a well-crafted film, that first one. I enjoy all of them, but that first one, I don't know that it gets enough credit for being such a well-done movie.
The first one is amazing. It's kind of odd, though, that the way the sequels went in some ways, that it's always been Don Mancini behind them all. It's like they really veered off to the left in later years, but I don't know if you're all caught up, if you've seen the most recent ones.
Yes.
The First and the Cult.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Dude.
Absolutely
awesome.
Fantastic. The way they have transitioned this series, but yet kept all the continuity, is just amazing. And people listening are like, really? Child's Play continuity? Do yourself a favor, especially that last one. That just absorbed everything. Just fantastic, fantastic writing. I'm really a fan of where they went with it.
Well, and the funny thing is, out of all of the horror series, it is the one that from the first movie to the most current movie, there is a through line. It all works. There's no rebooting. There are no like shitty new ideas that they abandoned after one movie. There's no like, because you can't follow Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, like none of the Halloween, none of those franchises hold steady throughout their entire history, but Child's Play does.
Yep. Even with the Seed of Chucky and all that stuff. Like,
which
everything
is,
just played into it.
I will talk about Seed of Chucky as little as possible, but it still fits. All right. Anybody else horrified by Child's Play initially? I'll admit that it like definitely. I was older when I saw it, but I mean it creeped me out. It's got like I said, it's a well crafted film. It's got some great jump scares.
It
Sean,
actually reminded me.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it.
Oh, come on. All right, Beth.
It reminded me a lot of when I first saw ads for it and first saw it. Remember Trilogy of Terror?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, the Karen Black bit with the doll that attacks her and then ends up possessing her.
Zuni doll or whatever it's called. Yeah. I can't remember. Yeah,
when
absolutely.
I saw ads for it, I was like, oh, it looks that's what that is. And then I watched it and I was like, okay, well, that's a little creepier because I've seen my buddy dolls in people's houses, and that's a little creepier than an African doll that people don't have.
Well, we're going to stick with you, Beth. It is your turn to discuss what displeased you in 1988.
I am going to veer off a little bit as well because I really, really looked. And despite the number of metal albums that came out in 1988, I didn't hate them because I just didn't listen to them. I couldn't find anything that I really was just upset or angry about. And I know that's going to shock and surprise people.
Whoa.
I know. So I'm picking something that I loved in 1988 and I just cannot ever see again. And that is the movie Willow.
Oh.
You would think that the magic of Ron Howard and George Lucas would last forever, but it does not.
No?
No. Have any of you seen it in the last 5 years?
No, probably not.
No.
Okay,
I haven't seen it in the last 10 years.
I don't know that I liked it when I saw it.
I loved it when I first saw it. And then 5 years ago, I tried to watch it again, and I was just like, God, what? Why? What is happening, and why?
Now, we all have to remember that this is the same Beth that was defending Krull up until recently.
Yeah.
And then I watched it, and I admitted defeat.
I would suggest going to your local theater in August because the Mystery Science Theater crew is going to be riffing Krull live in theaters on the simulcast for Riff Tracks.
Oh, wow.
I will absolutely go see that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I have left the Krull truthers behind.
Oh, man.
And Willow is just, God, awful now. I can see why they kept Warwick Davis in suits for so long because he can't act.
Now, when you look back, can you remember what you liked about it initially? Just the fantasy setting, or?
Yeah, I've always been super into fantasy, and having loved things like Labyrinth and Legend, and yes, Once Upon a Time, Krull, and all of that. It's like, oh, it's magic and it's fantasy and it's elves and pixies and shit. I love that garbage. So, of course, I loved it at the time. I was 14. Val Kilmer was hot. There was magic and garbage and all that shit.
What was his name in that? Didn't he have some cool name?
Mad Mardigan.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool name. I'm not going to lie. Oh, boy. Willow.
It's awful. If you haven't seen it lately, don't go see it again.
Yeah, I think I'll take your advice on that one. Sean and Chris, are you guys pretty much in agreement? Willow, not so much?
Yeah.
I'm all out on Willow.
All right.
I enjoy Leprechaun, though, so yay Warwick Davis.
Yeah, in general, I do enjoy Warwick Davis, but Willow's not. It's not on any of my lists at all.
He needs to stick to Leprechaun movies.
Sean, wrap up this section of displeasure.
Yeah, so I kind of, much like Beth, I had to search. 88 was a weird year. I had just moved, so I wasn't like I hated a lot of stuff. But then I went back to it, and I was like, no, I don't really hate that. I was just a miserable kid. And so I was like, I don't know. I think I like it. Whatever. So in searching for things that happened in 1988 to really see if I could find something, I did come across something, and you'll appreciate this, Dave. I think WrestleMania 4. We had my favorite wrestler, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, going against the Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental Championship, and Brutus was robbed of that Intercontinental Championship because Honky Tonk got himself disqualified. So Brutus wins the match, but doesn't get to win the belt. Now, I will say the silver lining is he was able to cut Jimmy Hart's hair, so that was good. But, yeah, my man, Brutus the Barber, the greatest wrestler of all time. That is so I could barely say that with a straight face.
Did he actually like remove the Hart mullet?
Yeah, he was. Well, I don't know that he cut all of it off. You remember back then he would cut like pieces of it off.
Right.
Most of it was fake and it was already in his hand. And at least he didn't take him with the giant lawn shears. But yeah, I was like, damn it, that was
your
his
head,
hand.
Jimmy Hart.
Right. Hulk Hogan's my best friend, and that's the whole reason I have a job. But yeah, when I was searching through and I saw that, I was like, oh, that's right. That damn dastardly Honky Tonk Man robbed Brutus of his Intercontinental Championship that was rightfully his. So that's my disappointing thing from 1988.
That's solid.
Overall,
no, that's fair. That's fair,
yeah.
Definitely. Chris, I feel like you've probably got input on this one.
Yeah, Brutus definitely not the best wrestler of all time. I don't know where that one
No. Brutus is awful, but he's just a great dumb gimmick.
I just remember that WrestleMania 4 as a whole, as a kid, I was like, oh, it's a tournament, all these guys. And watching it as I get older, it's not one that holds up. I really don't think much holds up about it other than DiBiase versus Savage in the finals, and then the Battle Royal. I think that the tournament was kind of pretty weak overall. But as far as Brutus and Honky specifically, those are two guys that I was really never into. So I really have no major opinion on that matchup. Those are two guys that were the very definition of just there to 8-year-old me, because I was a very young, smart fan.
Well, and they are kind of the quintessential 80s wrestler. Like, both of their gimmicks are really kind of dumb. And you're watching it like Hogan, Andre, even Shawn Michaels, all these guys have surpassed sort of just being big in the 80s. But I don't know how many people are lining up, randomly to be at cons and stuff to be like, hey, I'm going to go. I really got to get in line early for Honky Tonk's
still
autograph.
a big deal, man.
Is he?
Honky still pulls down some bucks for indie shows.
Wow.
He also registered like 6 other gimmicks and gets a cut of them.
Does he really?
No, he for instance, he owns the trademark now to the Patriot, so the guy who portrays the Patriot is actually Tom Brandy, a.k.a. Sal Sincere. So Del Wilkes, the Patriot of WCW and 97 WWF fame, can't even appear as the Patriot. There's like this whole big legal wrangling thing.
Gosh, that's crazy.
Wow. That's strange.
Yep, and supposedly, I don't know how true this is, but supposedly he registered like the Hacksaw trademark. So like Hacksaw gives him a cut. Like, I've seen that stuff posted on like message boards and stuff, so I don't know if that's just internet lore or whatever, but I know for a fact from trying to make a Patriot figure in the Figures Toy Company Legends line that it is the Honky Tonk Man who owns the rights to the gimmick, but there's so much legal back and forth that we were like, yeah, you know what, we're just going to not even try.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to let it go.
Yep.
All right, well, we made it through that murky swamp of 1988 disappointment. Let's wrap things up with a little speed round. I think each of us have one more thing that we loved about 1988. Let's see here. Oh, it's my turn. So I'm going to briefly mention the Dino Riders toy line. Somehow or other, as I was sort of phasing out of toys a bit, although I never really did because the Ninja Turtle toy line just kept me going. But for all intents and purposes, my parents were kind of done buying me toys for the most part. Somehow I convinced my mom that Dino Riders were educational.
They're dinosaurs.
So
it's a
that you can ride.
I ended up with a decent selection of Dino Riders of the first series. And to this day, I still think they're some of the best toys that have ever been made. And they're from Tyco, who, I mean, that's a company you really don't even think of all that much anymore. For me, you know, when I think about Tyco, I think more of the, like, the race car sets and stuff.
Oh yeah, they did all the remote control cars.
Yeah, that was kind of their bread and butter. But they launched this Dino Riders line of incredibly accurate, by 1988 standards, dinosaurs that you would attach armor and lasers and rockets to, and then the little figures, which were, the good guys were humans. The bad guys were ants and sharks and various other weird aliens. And the little guys rode the dinosaurs around, hence Dino Riders. But they were fantastic, and one of the things I loved so much is that when you did take all the armor and stuff off, it was just a dinosaur. None of that stuff was sculpted onto the dinosaur figures. Which always bugged the crap out of me when I was a kid, when it was like an extraneous extra part, but then it was molded onto the figure and you couldn't have like a pristine figure. That's a whole other episode I could get into. But I just loved the fact that you had this giant Tyrannosaurus Rex that looked like the type of T-Rex you'd see in a museum, but then you clipped all this stuff onto it, and it's this crazy science fiction murder machine. How can we make a Tyrannosaurus Rex even more dangerous? Strap freaking laser beams to its head.
Put guns on it and let it be driven by an anthropomorphic shark.
Yes, absolutely. And it's just an absolutely fantastic toy line. They're all great. I'm sitting here looking at a great website, DinoRidersWorld.com, that lists all the different series and variations and everything else. And, I mean, I loved the Diplodocus. I think that was probably my favorite one because I was always partial to troop transports, and this thing had big, giant cargo pods on the side. But anyway, Dino Riders, fantastic toy line of 1988, and really one of the few that launched that year. Not a whole lot of new stuff came out that year. Do you guys remember the Dino Riders?
I do. I actually had several, but I couldn't tell you a character's name. I was never like as heavily invested, but I did get a few for Christmas in 1988. I had about maybe 3 or 4 of them.
Well, it's funny because as with all 80s toy lines, it had a cartoon that was actually part of the Marvel Action Universe alongside RoboCop and Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends reruns, and then later
and
on
the one
a couple
shot
other
of
things. Yeah, right, exactly. Well, in 1989, prior to the X-Men came out, which was kind of the pseudo-pilot for the X-Men animated series, which, if you're interested in that, I interviewed the showrunner just last week right here on the Needless Things podcast. But, yeah, I don't remember the Dino Riders cartoon at all. I just remember the toys, and they were great. They were great toys. Sean, Dino Riders?
Yeah, I had none of the Dino Riders. I think at that time I was strictly Ninja Turtles, and I was knee-deep in BMX. So I wasn't collecting as many toys. I was buying bike parts.
Trying to get that sweet, sweet bike tang.
Yeah, there's none of that.
That was a whole song, wasn't it? Bike parts?
Beth, do you have any recollection of Dino Riders? There's no reason you should.
Yeah, I was a 14-year-old girl in 1988,
Yeah,
so
I got you.
No.
There was part of me that wanted Beth to go like, yeah, I have the entire set.
Right. I love them. They're fantastic. All right, well, Beth, what is your final great thing from 1988?
It was a tough call. Also surprising, there's no video game. I have no video game for 1988. I do have another movie. I know. There weren't that many good ones. I wasn't that into Mario. There was Mario 2 and 3, But it was a tough choice between Beetlejuice and They Live, and I went with Beetlejuice.
If I could have put money on one of your picks, it would have been Beetlejuice.
It was exactly what I needed when I needed it, because it was right when I was starting to realize, oh yeah, I am kind of weird, aren't I? I am into weird shit. Because I didn't know that what I was into was weird up until about that point, when I started to enter high school and meet a large group of other people, and I was like, oh, I'm not like all these other people, am I? These people are normal. I am not. And Beetlejuice was one of the things that made me realize that, because I not to get on a big Winona Ryder kick, I know I picked 2 Winona Ryder movies, but it wasn't because of her, but I identified with her character because of the line with, I myself am strange and unusual. Like, wait, I am, but not in the, quirky, like...
No, it's okay. It's okay. This is a safe place.
No, it's not.
No, not really.
No, it's cool. I'm here, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, well, yeah, it's Sean is here, so he's like our disdain sponge. It all gets aimed.
We're like the
over
anti-Planet Fitness. This is not a judgment-free zone.
You're right.
Having loved Pee-wee's Big Adventure and the visuals and everything that Tim Burton put into that, seeing Beetlejuice and it still being funny before he really started getting dark and super extra quirky, it was perfect.
Now, did you know at the time, did you know the name Tim Burton at the time?
I did, actually. I owned Pee-wee's Big Adventure probably the instant it came out on VHS. It's probably still in my closet somewhere, even though I no longer have a VHS player. But it's probably still somewhere here. I was obsessed with that. I was already an Oingo Boingo fan.
Oh,
so I
okay.
Some of us discovered Oingo Boingo before 5 years ago.
All right. It wasn't even 5. It was like last year. It's even worse than that.
All right, I was trying to give you some kind of credit.
No, don't bother. Yeah, I don't know that I was even aware. I mean, I again, much like Roger Rabbit, Beetlejuice is one that my papa took me to see in the theater, and he didn't care for it at all. But I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And the music, Danny Elfman's music, is one of the things that really stayed with me about the movie. But I don't think until Batman came out the next year, I don't think I really had any awareness of Tim Burton as a specific director or person. But then when I dove into all things Batman is when I started learning, oh crap, that's the same guy that did these other movies that I love. Great, I'm excited. Michael Keaton, what? But we'll get into that in next year's episode. Any other Beetlejuice memories from you guys? Or Beth, did you have more about Beetlejuice?
No, I was trying to keep it with the speed round. That's all I had.
Yeah. People will keep listening. They love us. Chris and Sean, any Beetlejuice specific stuff?
I love Beetlejuice. Came to it late, so
unsurprising.
I came to it early, and my sister actually came to it even earlier because, as I said, she's 5 years younger. So when it premiered on cable, we were watching it, and she decided to mimic the nice fucking model scene because she didn't really grasp that fact, and she was only 4 years old at the time. So, yeah, that was probably funnier than the movie to me at that point. But it's a movie that I enjoy. It's just one of those movies that's there. You know what I mean? It's another movie that I own. I'll watch it if it's on, but nothing that I go out of my way to see. But I'm a Michael Keaton fan, and I think he's just fantastic in that movie.
Yeah, his character in that one, I mean, for 12-year-old me, he was pretty much the coolest guy on the planet at the time. Let's see, Sean, your final great thing from 1988.
My final pick, rounding out what is kind of a dinosaur-heavy episode with Land Before Time and Dino Riders.
All right.
There was a cartoon that I feel like people know what this is, but at the same time, when I was watching it, nobody knew what the hell it was, and I feel like I was the only person in the world watching it. But I was addicted to Denver, the Last Dinosaur. There we go.
I still remember the theme song.
Right, well, because it's awesome. It's a fucking dinosaur with playing guitar and doing extreme sports. So here's how I got into this again, because like I said, I was knee deep into BMX in 1988, and I see this cartoon, and it has a skateboarding and BMX riding dinosaur. And this is back when, other than watching the movie Rad ad infinitum, which I totally did, anything that even looked or smelled like BMX, I was going to watch, because if they were going to ride bikes in an episode, I didn't want to miss it. And so I watched every damn episode about these kids and their random pet dinosaur that they were trying to hide from this villainous concert promoter that just wanted to put him on stage because he's a rock and roll dino. And I was completely hooked on this show. Like, Denver the Last Dinosaur got me through some dark times when I was 12.
It was like they threw The Land Before Time, Rad, and Thrashing into a blender, and we got Denver the Last Dinosaur.
Right, and I am that cross-section audience.
For you, the one person out there, it reached you.
Yes.
If Chris was not here to back you up, I would swear you had just created this in your brain. I
remember the theme song. It's like, Denver the Last Dinosaur. He's our friend and a whole lot more.
I have no recollection of this. Wow.
You got to look up the theme song on YouTube.
This was all over syndication. I remember this vividly.
I wonder if I have some kind of weird, dark, repressed memory related to it, and that's why I can't remember it. I don't know.
No, you probably had a functional childhood and friends.
Well, no, definitely. That certainly wasn't the issue, Sean. Let me just tell you. All right. Chris, wrap us up. What is your final favorite thing from 1988?
All right, so my final favorite thing from 1988, as I mentioned, I had already been heavily invested into comic books, very into superheroes. You heard my Hulk story. So 1988 saw the premiere of a television show about a teenage kid who gets superpowers when he gets struck down by a laser. And one of my favorite shows of all time is My Secret Identity, starring Jerry O'Connell.
Nice.
So here's this kid.
That theme song is in my head right now.
Yes, another very catchy tune.
Yeah.
But what better way to spend a half hour every Saturday night at 6 o'clock than to watch a kid be able to fly, sometimes with the help of hairspray cans, or be completely invulnerable to punches, or have super speed. I remember that the first episode I ever taped, I was disappointed because it was like the third or fourth episode, and instead of being this awesome, like, I got to stop these bad guys using my powers, it was about how he wanted to join the track team and should he use his super speed or not to win. I'm like, it's not as cool as the first 3 episodes. Excuse me. But that is a show that, despite having no official DVD release, thanks to the powers of conventions and bootlegs, I managed to have the whole run on DVD.
Nice. Yeah, I remember that show, and it popped up in my list, and I was like, man, I know I watched it every single time it came on for at least the first. Do you know how many seasons it ran?
It ran for 3 seasons. There's about like 60 or so episodes, maybe a couple more. You can actually watch most of them on YouTube until they get yanked down, but they're up there in full in pretty good quality. Excuse me, my allergies are kind of playing with me tonight, so I've been coughing a little bit.
Oh, no worries.
But I was so into this show. Here's how into the show I was. So we went to Disney World for the very first time, at least my very first time, the first week of December in 1988. And we were all getting ready, and it was a Saturday morning, and I guess in Florida, they aired My Secret Identity on a certain channel on a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning. It was definitely the weekend. But we were getting ready to go to the park, and I refused to leave the condo we were staying at until I could watch the episode of My Secret Identity. And I remember the episode it was when his sister falls in the storm drain or the sewer drain, and he's going to figure out a way to get her without revealing his powers to her.
That's fantastic. It was almost a younger-oriented latter-day greatest American hero kind of thing, because he wasn't always great at using his powers.
Right, yeah, he was very clumsy. And,
yeah.
He had the scientist friend as like the comic relief trying to steer him in the right direction and stuff. And then in the later, as Jerry O'Connell got a little bit older, it became more of like a high school show with superpowers, which was also cool to me because I'm all about the high school shows, as we know.
Sure.
But it is excuse me, it is a show that, I wouldn't say every episode necessarily holds up. There's some pretty cheesy ones. Like there's one in the later seasons which was inspired by the fact that Dick Tracy was in the movies, where Andrew, which was Jerry O'Connell's character, kind of imagines himself in Dick Tracy. So there's definitely some silly stuff that goes on, but overall, it's a great show, and it's one that I'll rewatch. Like I said, I've got the DVDs, and if I can find them, for free on YouTube, just if I'm, cruising out and about on my phone, or if I just want something to put on for background noise, I'll throw on some episodes and watch it. It's something that I still enjoy to this day.
Nice. Beth and Sean, do you guys remember that one?
I have no idea what that is.
Wow. And it looks like we have lost Sean for some reason. Perhaps he was attacked by birds. We may never know.
Or Denver the Last Dinosaur.
Or Denver the Last Dinosaur. It's entirely possible.
He was attacked by shame.
So, having fulfilled my threat to eject Sean from the show for liking Kokomo, let's. Oh, he's back.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Guess who's the technologist in the group?
I was claiming that I'd ejected you for liking Kokomo.
Yeah, and for not knowing anything about that show that we just talked about. So,
well, that's okay. Because
I joined back in to say I don't have anything.
Well, you do have something, because it's time for us to wrap this thing up and for everybody to talk about what you're up to and where we can find you online. Sean, let's start with you.
So you can find me primarily on Instagram at the Rad Ranger. You can also go to theradranger.com. It's Rad with Rad Ranger and Ryan is on hiatus right now because there's been a whole lot of shows and other things going on, and so Ryan hasn't had time to record. But we'll be back for season 2 here very soon.
Did you say season 2?
That's what we're calling it.
Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Beth, where can we find you online?
Well, you can find me at needlessthings.com every other Tuesday, and coming up, an expose on how to stay married to a person who doesn't like Jaws, Predator, and the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh my god!
It may end in divorce. I'm not sure yet how it may end.
The trials that you...
Yeah, it's a rough life. Life is hard. But I am gearing up for Dragon Con, so there is that mini vacation to look forward to while I contemplate my marriage.
Chris, what are you up to? Where can we find you online? And any news from Figures Toy Company?
Yeah, so over at figurestoycompany.com, which is my employer, the company that I've worked for nearly 20 years now, we just put out a whole bunch of awesome-looking new stuff. The most popular items right now would be the Kiss Dynasty collection in both 8-inch figure and 12-inch figure retro figure format, and the Legends of Professional Wrestling. We have created the first ever and probably the only ever figure of the WCW Kiss Demon, which was officially licensed and blessed by Kiss. It is a fantastic looking figure. It's one of our best. It just came out alongside Juventud Guerrera. The two of them are by far blowing up right now. Just everybody.
A Hoovy figure?
A Hoovy figure. A Lucha Hoovy figure.
Oh, Hoovy is Beth's favorite.
Hoovy. The juice is loose at Figures Toy Company. He is up there.
And you guys just put up a Batcave too, right?
The 1966 Batcave,
yes,
with images and designs based on those that you saw in the TV series. A couple of Two-Face variants up there, a couple of Henchman packs for the Henchman from the 66 show. Lots of stuff coming out on the wrestling end. I just signed Francine from ECW, so she's getting her first ever figure. She'll be the first female ever in any form of our Legends line. Working with some more top indie talent to lock some of those guys down.
The first Legends figure, you have to be 18 or older to buy.
Well, she will be coming with the Singapore cane. What you guys do with that is completely, I'm just going to turn a blind eye to that one. We also sell the wrestling merchandise at WrestlingSuperstore.com. You can find us at Figures Toy Co. on Twitter, at WRES_Superstore on Twitter. Look for the company name on Facebook and Instagram. When I am not working for a Figures Toy Company and Wrestling Superstore, I am quite often doing things like this podcast with our good friend Richard Yule. He and I just did a podcast on the first full season of Cobra Kai, which is a fantastic show. I urge everybody to check it out. I also review movies over at bulletproofaction.com. My most recent one was Neon Maniacs, which you, Dave, said you had actually never seen, which surprised me.
I've never even heard of it.
I figured that movie was right up your alley, and it is. So you should definitely check it out.
Yeah, I'll find out.
You can actually, if you don't want to seek it out, I mean, it is available on DVD, but it's up on YouTube, but it's up at YouTube in pieces because that's how old it's been.
Oh, no, I'll track one down before I'll watch that.
And my next review, I believe, is going up tomorrow, which focuses on the Cynthia Rothrock Bolo-Young martial arts epic Tiger Claws. So, yeah, you can find all sorts of good stuff in my reviews, and you can follow me personally at Zach Malibu.
Awesome. Thank you guys all for dropping in and talking about 1988, and I will talk to you all again next year for 1989. 1988, greatest year ever. Okay, maybe not really the greatest year ever. I actually had some difficulty figuring out what I was going to talk about, but that's okay because we had a great time, of course, talking to Beth and Sean and Chris, as we always do. What I'm doing right now is recording the outro before I'm even really done with the episode, because I have to sit here and wait for the levelator to finish doing its thing, because what I didn't realize is my stupid headphones had reset to 79 instead of 100 on the volume level. So throughout the whole conversation, you get me talking like this, and then Chris jumps in and sounds like this. So I had to go in the levelator, and I'm waiting for that thing to process, which takes forever, but thank goodness for it, because it works. And thanks to Mike Faber, our pal over at ESO, for telling me about levelator, because I wouldn't have known anything about it otherwise. Please go check out Nerdy Laser. You know how to use Google. You can find it. Rich is awesome. I love talking to him. We had a fun time. Go to needlessthingspodcast.com, click on the Amazon link, and check out our articles that get posted. I'm going to have to say we're up to an every once in a while schedule, but that's okay, because I love doing the podcast, even if writing is not necessarily my favorite thing to do anymore. It's not even that. It's just the time, man. Having time to sit down and write. What else do I have to say? It's been like 10 years. It's been 10 years. I'm out of words about things. Hey, this action figure looks like it's supposed to look, and it has elbows. 5 out of 5. Bam. Really? That's all I can do now? Oh, it's another movie with effects and stuff, and I enjoyed it. It was cool. I'll probably buy it on Blu-ray. I don't know. I love you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Needless Things podcast. You're the best. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Downcast, or in the ears of a Trader Vic's employee. Love you. Mean it. Uh-huh.